Today, we've got practical effects operator, cinematographer, director, member of International Cinematographers Guild, and Academy of Motion Pictures member, David R. Hardberger. How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
Glad to be here.
I don't think we've really hung out since Hall H before the plague.
Ooh, that sounds about right.
So this is kind of cool coming full circle.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually sort of just fast track your resume here because most people don't know. Like,
you're probably going to pick up stuff that I've long forgotten.
Well, let's have at it.
Okay.
So, you've got a resume that includes Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
yes.
Star Trek, the original motion picture, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which is my favorite Star Trek, hands down.
Okay, you're in the club.
Sweet. You got Blade Runner, War Games, Star Wars Return of the Jedi, second favorite Star Wars film of all time, Spaceballs, Willow, Sliders, Final Destination, and the OG Lord of the Rings trilogy. We've got Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. And I know we could probably read your IMDb for like 2 hours, so I'm just like leaving it there.
Okay.
So where we're at now is like talking about what it's like to be a creative, and of course we're labeling you as such because you're obviously successful and you're like paid for being creative. So like, what are your favorite movies?
Well, you want my favorite movies that I've done, or just movies that I've watched and I really like?
I'll allow it. There's some overlap.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's see. Sci-fi. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Ooh.
What's the one we were talking about? Oh, The Thing. Both the original and the remake. Babadook, which is that's not really sci-fi. General movies, Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So long will they be a little people, a silly people.
Lawrence of Arabia, for me, the thing I always get blown away by is those wide shots with the huge casts of riders and all that stuff. I'm like, how did you, I don't know, that's mind-blowing. Because we do it all digitally now.
Yeah, and those were all real peeps.
Yeah.
Same with Ben-Hur. Well, not in the chariot race sequence so much. But if any of you saw 55 Days of Peking,
Oh, that long time ago.
yeah,
that was
that's ancient.
The siege that they did. Yeah.
And all the people running around in the background,
Yeah.
those are real peeps.
Oh my god. Yeah, it reminds me of the Alamo.
Yeah.
Remember the Alamo?
Yeah.
So what kind of streaming shows are you currently watching?
Let's see. I watched The Sandman.
I have to gather my offerings from the dreams of others.
Rings of Power.
Now, we learned many words for death.
I was trying to get into House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
But we don't have the subscription to that, so I have to wait.
sit isa.
But there's a lot of good stuff out there right now. There really is.
Yeah.
I like Rings of Power. Some issues here and there.
Right.
Can I say this? Elrond.
Okay.
He's not Hugo Weaving.
Yes. Yeah.
He looks more like Doogie Howser Elrond.
Yeah.
If you look at him with Harry Styles haircut.
Yeah.
Just drives me nuts. But I like the show as a rule.
Hugo Weaving's pretty much untouchable.
Yeah.
When you're watching films as a kid, I guess this is sort of a layered question. What were your favorite films then, and then how did your taste sort of mature over time?
I can blame a lot of this on my mother, which sounds very Freudian.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
To escape, we were living with my grandparents. My grandmother, if she was in The Wizard of Oz, they would have dropped a house on her. She was awful.
Oh.
So to get away from her, my mom, let's go to the movies. Okay, what are we going to see? I didn't care.
Yeah.
And one of the first sci-fi, I think it may have been the first sci-fi thing I ever saw, was War of the Worlds.
Oh, wow.
And when the Cobra head comes up over the
Yeah.
what's the crater,
Yeah.
Open up! Come on out! We're friends! That's right! We welcome you! We're friends! Yeah!
and zaps the three guys, it's like, that pushed me over the edge. I'm going to do that for a living.
Yeah.
Try saying that in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's not going to happen.
But then again, that's also like probably where the practical effects side sort of first got plugged into your head, because you're watching this model.
Yeah, because the
do
Cobra
thing.
head is a
Yeah,
model, but
yeah.
it looks pretty impressive,
Yeah.
and all the death ray that comes out of it, that's all animated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes a good movie? If you were to sort of generalize watching something that you haven't seen before, and that sort of sticks out to you as you're experiencing it, you go, "Oh, this is a good movie" when you're watching it.
Ah. Yeah, Hell and High Water.
It makes me a Comanche.
That's a good actioner.
Okay.
Taylor Sheridan. Wind River, if anybody saw that.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to take it's easier.
But like, yeah, like, there are only a few films where I'm like, oh yeah, this is like, and it pulls you in, or there's like a specific moment or thing they do.
And then we could get into black and white French films made in the 50s.
Okay.
No reaction from Sean at all.
To generalize then, what is your favorite genre to watch?
I have to say sci-fi. If it's
Yeah.
good sci-fi, it's not the guy in the rubber suit,
Right.
you know, that was so prevalent in the 50s, although that's the shit I grew up on. So it got to the point where I was watching so much, Terror from the Unknown or something like that came out. Mom, come on, here's some money for candy, and I'll pick you up at, just turn me loose in the theater.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, she don't want to sit through that.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta say, some of my favorite shows are always sci-fi. But then again, if there's a certain barrier.
Yeah.
Like if it's poorly written or there's no continuity in the technology, I'm very nerdy, so if they establish a rule and they start breaking it in an episode, I'm like, why are you doing that? But it's true. When it's done well, it's addictive.
Forbidden Planet.
Okay, yeah.
Flash, the thing's invisible!
I mean, some of the stuff's very dated, but the general concept, the general feel of the thing, it still works pretty well.
Right.
I'd like to see it. No, I don't want to see it done again.
Yeah.
Cancel it. Strike that.
Yeah. Off the list. And then, who inspires you?
Stanley Kubrick. Chris Nolan.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Not necessarily for the Batman series. He
Right.
did some stuff earlier that I thought was
That was Memento, right?
Memento. First one of his that I saw, and that put me away.
Teddy, don't believe his lies. He is the one. Kill him.
Older directors, David Lean,
Sure. Yeah.
Don Siegel.
So I'm wondering if we can, like, as you sort of think of your favorite directors, what about basics? In terms of, like, what are practical effects? How would you describe that to somebody who doesn't know anything about that?
It's something that can be done on set in the real world. So there's, it's a real explosion, it's real fire, it's the ceiling dropping in.
Right.
Wrath of Khan,
Yeah, for sure.
where the Reliant gets hit, and a couple of the crewmen drop right through the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the real deal.
Fire.
There's some classic things about that the visual effects driven films I see in modern cinema now, they don't really show momentum correctly. It's almost like everything has no weight and it moves really quick, and I feel like sometimes practical effects actually roots roots the effect in reality,
yeah,
because it has to be moved or the camera has to be steered around the object, right?
And there's a mass there.
Right.
Which a lot of times the CG doesn't capture. Interesting, I've heard this from several people over the last few years, and it's not just people in my age bracket, there are a lot of younger people. Too much CG. And that's been the complaint.
And it's not just like one of those things where I don't think too much CG is an issue as long as it's like an animated series or something. Like it's a,
Okay.
you know, like you mentioned Love, Death, and Robots.
Yes.
You know, like you understand that the entire thing is an animated sequence.
Yes.
Right. And so one of the things that throws me is when it's obvious that it switches from a real scene with real actors moving in a, you know, they're blocked and they're doing their
Right.
thing, and then there's like this digital element that sort of just hijacks the whole thing, and then you slip out of it because there's no real practical connection to it. Practical effects to me have always made it more rooted, like particularly in the 90s Star Trek TV show, where there was big models that they would film, and then they would layer them in with other big models they shot, and then the effects were over top, and it was pretty rad.
And that's where I think the effects work the best, if it's a
Right.
mixed bag.
Yeah.
The example I've used a lot is the Helm's Deep sequence in
yeah.
Return of the King.
Yeah.
They're, hang on, your camera, the walls here, you have Legolas and some of the others looking out at the battlefield. Their foreground, that's all live action. The middle ground is miniature.
Oh, wow.
And then the background is painting.
Yeah, because I felt like I think that was actually Two Towers.
Did I say Return of the King?
Yeah.
Oh,
but
God.
I mean, I
Points off.
understand the
Ugh.
contrast, because like when I watched Two Towers, and that was the mixed practical effects and some digital. I mean, for me, it was hard to distinguish what was digital and what was real on that part of it.
Then we did our job.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like in the third film, I'm like, this is a totally digital sequence. You know?
It's also one of those things, you
Yeah.
have a shit ton of people. Can I say shit ton?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You have a lot of people on the battlefield, plus the Oliphants, the Mumblekill.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of that has to be done digitally.
For
You know,
sure.
Yeah, we couldn't go over to the Wellington Zoo and just get a big elephant.
Or you can't like do the stop motion puppets.
Although that is still being done. There's one out right now. Wendell, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the same guy that did Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I want to see that. I like stop motion. I
Yeah.
think there's a quality and there's a charm and a feel to it that you just can't get.
True.
Yeah, I've done just a little stop motion. It is painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ready? Click. I'm going to go back to reading.
So like what kind of traits or skills do you think a person needs to have to go down that kind of career? I mean, I imagine it's different from when you started and to what it would be now. So I guess this is a question relevant to now. If someone wanted to do practical effects, where would they start?
Ooh, good question. There are still a few practical effects houses out there, not many, with makeup especially. Because I find that more believable with real makeup
Yeah.
than also puppeteers. I don't know where you'd start on that.
Right.
But
I imagine like Stan Winston or things like that.
Yeah. This was brought up at Comic-Con. Somebody was talking about having puppets. And I think there was somebody sitting in back of us and said, they don't use those anymore, or something like that. And actors love them.
Yeah.
Well, because you have something right in front
Right.
of you. And
Yeah.
if the puppet's done right, you have another character.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was brought up, and I didn't even think of this, and from a camera point of view,
Right.
from a photographic point of view, I should have, is as the character gets closer to you,
Right.
there's going to be some bounce light off of them onto you.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, there are still companies doing that. When we worked for Todd Tucker, he had several animatronic characters. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work on the film.
I imagine that like there's going to be sort of a return to this because with 3D CAD files and like 3D printing and rendering and things like that, some of the barriers that used to exist, like taking a mold of someone's life, like life capture, is like a thing that's happening that allows not just for 3D or for all the mocap, but I imagine also works for prosthetics and things of that nature, because back in the day you used to have to do that like you're cutting a Venus de Milo, you got to go through that. Now you can just render it, layer it on top, and now you've got like this fully workable alien creature a lot faster. So I imagine it's probably going to swing back around.
I kind of hope so.
Me too.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
I was going to make a point about
You were talking about light and bouncing off of the
character onto the actor.
Yeah.
I worked on one film. It was Tall Tale. Anybody see it?
No.
Neither did anybody else. And there was this character in it called the Cliffside Grounder, which was kind of this hybrid, almost like a chimera creature. And we filmed that, interacting with the principal character, with the main live action character in the movie.
Right.
We did a whole segment on that. Not a whole segment, like maybe 6 cuts.
Right.
And when I walked on stage, they had the Cliffside Grounder. It was from like the head, the forearms, down to about the waist, full size. And I think they had 4 people working it. And I walk on there, and the thing's moving around, and the eyes are going in like 6 different directions. The tongue's falling out of its head and kind of doing that. And I go, oh, this isn't going to work. 2 hours later, the puppeteers had it nailed.
Oh, wow.
And it looked like the real deal.
Yeah.
What happened? Whoever the powers that be at the studio felt that it wasn't driving the story forward, so they cut the whole sequence.
What?
Yeah, I know.
It's bizarre.
Don't get me started.
Well, it's almost like it's like, with those scare mazes that you go to.
Yeah.
When you go to scare mazes and they do this great, like, let's say it's usually like the third act of the maze. It's usually a big puppet that's got at least 1 or 2 operators on it. And it's always like, people love those things. And I feel like, I know that's a live element and that's not a cinematography, but you can tell.
Yeah.
Like, there are times where I go back and I watch, again, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, like, practical effect. I know it's dated, but it still keeps me in the scene. Whereas there's some CGI-driven films where, you go back and you watch them, and you're like, I can't watch this again. I can't experience any sort of, because
something's going on that is pulling you out of the moment.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found watching films over the years, if you suck me in and you keep me there, yeah, that's where it's a good film.
Yeah. I guess the next question is, we're gonna, if we're doing practical effects, obviously we have to talk about cinematography.
Yeah.
And so, becoming a director of cinematography, how would someone get into cinematography now?
Now?
Yeah, and like what's their career path?
The game's changed so much. I wouldn't begin to guess how to start. I mean, somebody, film school, I don't know how much film school is helping you. I really don't. I think in some case it does.
Yeah.
I did 2 semesters or 2 years over at Valley Junior College, got a job at Universal, never went back.
Right, okay.
I mean, I was getting paid at that time a whopping $75 a week for being, and I had an official title and everything.
Right.
Yeah, it was still $75 a week.
Still, I mean, the barriers now for that particular trade, I think I wouldn't say most, some people I know took out loans to buy the new camera, and then they would use the camera as, they would pitch the camera rental and become the assist. And that's what I've heard stories about people getting into.
A lot of people have done that.
But yeah,
one of the things I found, and people have asked me, so why don't you own your own equipment? Because what I buy now, well, a few years ago, what I would have bought then is now basically an antique.
True.
I mean, it'll still get rented out,
right?
But not as much as the Black Magics or something like that.
Yeah, but I imagine there's at least a window of opportunity of acquiring the new technology, having an asset, and using that as your leverage. Because I mean, sometimes like I sometimes do auditions at those colleges where those kids are training, and obviously there's a huge leap in like personal finances to those groups. Like they do some crazy magical things, but that's not something that's readily available to everyone else, except YouTube's tutorials and then like online reviews for equipment and things like that. I feel like the guerrilla filmmaker has an opportunity to become cinematographer. It's just, you know, it's a different game. It's more closer to what you just described.
Starting off doing music videos.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good opportunity, and because they're kind of freewheeling, and you have an opportunity to be creative, do whatever. Sometimes you didn't mention this. I'm on the San Luis Obispo Film Festival. I'm one of the screeners.
Oh wow!
And the thing that I pitched to the festival, this was several years ago, was, can we have a music video category?
Yeah.
Because
that can get a lot of people started.
That can get a lot of people interested in the festival.
Right.
Because what was happening, we were starting to age out.
Right.
You know, I go to some screenings up there, like over at the Palm, which is a little indie house. I'm the youngest guy in the room. So.
Yeah, you're like, I need to put some rungs in this ladder so that people can get through.
So attracting more people to the festival by music video, and there's some really good stuff out there.
Yeah.
There really is. And others, it's like, okay, you may want to go back to, you know, working at Starbucks.
Right.
Because this isn't the career path for you.
So then,
Not that there's anything wrong with Starbucks. It's just, it's an opportunity.
Well, I mean,
it's a paycheck.
A lot of people actually have to, you know, do both. They have to daytime barista, then do the thing. But I mean, I get it. So then, moving into directing, similar line of question. It's like, if someone wants to get into directing now, what would you say is the best career path?
Make some shorts.
Make some shorts. Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
So like digital shorts, or are you looking for streaming?
Digital shorts at the festivals, streaming. The thing that I tell, you know, students that I talk to, keep in mind you're now entering a really competitive market, worse than it was before, because everybody can get a camera. Everybody has good editing equipment, you know, that's affordable.
Like a lot of stuff now is just based on the phone.
Yeah,
like
anybody can make a movie.
Most of it in there.
Anybody can make a movie.
Yeah.
The problem is anybody can make a movie.
Right, and now it's getting above the noise, right?
I've seen some stuff shot on the iPhone. Not bad. Anybody see Tangerine?
No.
And the reason they did that, because I talked to one of the actresses, the director wanted to shoot on Santa Monica Boulevard, Santa Monica and Highland, which is an incredibly well-traveled street, especially at night.
Oh, and they didn't,
And you have cops aplenty.
And permits and all that, yeah.
So they don't want, you know, they're out there with a professional camera, they'll get stopped. They're out with an iPhone.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Okay. I got some good news to tell you.
What?
I've been keeping a secret about me and Chester.
Girl. Woo! I know what it is. You're breaking up with him. Thank God. Because, honey, for him to be cheating on you like that.
Wait, what?
But it worked.
Yeah.
But the thing that keeps you really engaged in that is the characters in the story. And so you cut some slack on the way it looks. It doesn't look bad, but, you know, it
worked.
It worked. Yeah.
So let's get more into your career then.
Okay.
And what made you want to go in? We just talked about War of the Worlds, or it was War of the Worlds you saw that.
That pushed me over the edge.
Now, like, from that path forward, what did you do? Did you get like an 8mm film?
Yeah. Surprised that I got an 8mm camera.
Yeah.
And I just saw it.
Like a manual, like those ones that were hanging.
No, this was you wind it up and and then the spring runs out and you do it again.
That's rad.
It wasn't Super 8. I think it was regular 8.
Okay.
And we did that. It was a war movie. It's, I think I saw a cut of it recently. We'll just keep that in the closet for the next 50 years.
Who knows? It might be relevant.
Yeah, it's also good blackmail material.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
But then my mom moved to California. Took me, and around here I said, "Hey, we're kind of close to movie studios. I'll go over and put in applications."
Oh my God. God.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So did that for a few months, nothing. And then this guy at this coffee house we used to hang out at, he was looking for an assistant.
Mm-hmm. Just a regular assistant.
He was. This was back in the day when they were doing designed main titles.
Say what?
Designed main titles. Did you see the Andromeda Strain?
No.
Really?
No, I didn't see the Andromeda. You're gonna have to describe it.
Main title of the picture. There's a lot of artwork going on.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
I
I can talk to you again.
Sorry, I was thinking like something like construction. Okay, anyway. Yeah, main titles.
And he was doing that, and in fact, I think he was doing it for the Andromeda Strain.
Oh, no kidding.
So I got a job doing that, and one thing led to another. I ended up doing animation camera for a while, which got me into the union, and it just kind of branched out from there. I did, I think, a year at a commercial house in Hollywood.
Okay.
Fairly well-known commercial house. Learned a lot.
Just put in long hours figuring out.
Oh God, it was incredibly long hours.
Yeah. That's usually the best path. Like if you get into a production house or any place and just be in there and figure out where you're supposed to be, because everyone has this vision of like, I want to be blah, blah, blah. You don't, I feel like we all set out with an initial goal and then we end up somewhere else and we're like, wow, I guess I'm doing this now and this is what I do.
I've talked to more people that have started off one way, and it's like, so I wanted to be a director. What are you doing now? Sound.
Yeah, because they had the ear or they put in enough time and they got really good at it.
Yeah.
So like, what was your first industry? You said that the first industry job was the Andromeda Strain.
Yeah.
Okay, and then again, it was just you did on the job. Learning the skills
on the
as
job
you go.
training, yeah.
Okay, and so that job itself, it set you up for everything else you were doing in terms of understanding how each trade that you ended up doing.
One thing led to another, led to another, led to another.
Right.
The commercial house, and it was all animated. It was all graphics. Mm-hmm. Because the boss was Robert Abel, who had a shit ton of Clios. Mm-hmm. In the display cabinet. He really knew what he was doing, but Bob would get, we don't have any jobs anymore. Bob, we still have 3 in the house. I'll go out and get more.
Right.
And then he'd come back several weeks later with like 5 more jobs.
Right.
That all had similar deadlines.
Right.
So, it was basically, you end up working in the mines of Moria for Robert Abel.
So were there any like pitfalls or missteps that either you did or you saw someone else do?
I've had enough I've done enough. We don't have to talk about those.
But I mean, if you could speak hypothetically about some other person that had pitfalls, or
person that had pitfalls,
things that like could maybe warn the listener not to do, that would be pretty useful.
Oh, you mean like double exposing the film?
Yeah.
Somebody else in the house did that.
Yeah.
What else?
Overpromised. I mean, those are always scenarios where people promise more than they could possibly deliver, and then they're in trouble.
The boss did that a lot,
and
he really did.
Yeah,
because he was so anxious to get work in the house, and it was to get work in the house and also to get really top-end clients. So he was pitching some of the best advertising houses in the day. We can do your Levi's commercial. We can do your whatever.
How did you survive failing his client? Did they just walk away, or were there lawsuits or anything like that?
I think that never came down to our level.
You just know something happened.
We were just droids in a dark room.
Right. So, like, you've worked on now you've worked on big budget features and television, music videos. So, what's your favorite type of project out of all that?
Favorite project? It's kind of, I'd say Lord of the Rings is the favorite, followed by Blade Runner.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Star Trek, the original, this is between the three, and the entire listening audience. Right. I thought the motion picture was kind of boring.
Yes.
It wasn't a snooze fest, but it was like, Can we get the V'ger?
Yes.
The thing on Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Robert Abel and Associates, my former boss, had the project for a while.
Right.
I think they had it for almost a year and produced almost nothing.
Oh, wow.
The only thing that I remember coming out of the wormhole sequence where the faces start to stretch.
Mr. Decker. Emergency alert. Emergency alert. Emergency alert. Wormhole. Get us back in impulse power. Full reverse. Emergency alert. Emergency alert.
Right. That came out of everything else. No, they didn't have it, or it was unusable.
Oh, wow.
So Paramount hires Doug Trumbull, his company, to do it. And because Dave Stewart, who started me in visual effects camera, he's no longer with us, sad to say. He calls me up, we're doing blah, okay, I'll come over. When do we start? Started in early February and went through to November that same year, and it was non-stop. And it was a union gig.
Oh, wow.
It was great.
So good money.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So is that what made it your favorite type of project?
No, that was just, it was absolutely grueling.
Yeah. So this was not your favorite project.
I liked it. I thought the end product, it looked great.
Right.
It had a great look to it. I really liked it.
Right.
But as far as an overall film,
I guess the distinction that we haven't made quite yet for the audience is, and we've talked about it, but we haven't really cleared it up, which is deciding what should be practical and what should be visual. Because I think when people look at these layers in film, and although you and I somewhat understand it, I also need clarification because I'm like, which layer is doing what and when, and people need to understand that distinction.
This is usually hashed out in pre-production by the effects supervisor and the director.
Okay.
As to what's going to be practical, what isn't.
Right.
Now, as to whether it stays that way,
right.
Sometimes there's little detours here and there. The best example I can think of, Inception.
Okay.
Inception?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah,
Yes?
I've seen
Okay,
it.
you're in the club.
Yay.
Yeah. Annie?
Yeah.
Okay. Where the train comes down the street.
Yes.
And just starts knocking shit all over the place.
Yeah.
The train is real.
Ah, that's awesome.
The engine.
Yeah.
What they did was they took a truck, stripped off the cab and all that, and built this engine.
Okay.
And the cars on the street are the real deal. So it's coming down there and just knocking crap left and right.
Oh, that's
Everything on the back of the train is all CG. And that's another one I think had me convinced.
Yeah. How do the best filmmakers that you follow make those choices? Like, where this will be a practical element and this will be a digital element, or like that distinction. I can't imagine how.
Peter Jackson did a lot. He made, they planned this out on the first 3 movies pretty carefully as to what was going to be bigatures.
Which is my favorite part of the BTS, like just the big,
the tree, the elves in the trees.
Gorgeous.
I'm not sure, but I think the Greybeard, one of the lead ant, I think he may be a puppet.
Yes.
Don't hold me to that.
Yes, because they needed to put Merry and Pippin on that, and so that was a practical with some digital elements. So he's I guess both.
It's a hybrid.
Yeah.
That's where it works. In the Hobbit series, I don't know what the hell happened there. I probably will never get hired back in New Zealand again. It just didn't work for the most part. It was too digital.
Right. Well, I kind of feel like with we were talking about prosthetics.
Yeah.
The living orcs or the urukai.
Urukai.
Yeah. They look. They're intimidating. They're in the shot. But when you had the digital
Lures, the head Urukai, where I met him at the rap party, he's huge. I mean, I'm 5'8" and I'm looking up at him.
Yeah.
You know, and he looks like somebody that could really pound you into the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
On the flip side, he's one of the nicest people.
Yeah. That's so rad. So I guess where we're headed now is technology is changing. It's changing very quickly. How do you think that's going to change that relationship? Or is it going to stay the same?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue advancing.
Okay.
I want to see the new Avatar. I want to see what Cameron's done
Yeah.
with the characters. Apparently there's better facial capture. I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of liked the first one, even though it was a rehash. Was it Fern Gully? Was it kind of a rehash of Fern Gully? I didn't care. I didn't see
Right.
Fern Gully, so I didn't care.
Yeah, there you go. This is the Ferngully I always wanted. But I mean, okay, so we're talking about Cameron, but I'm wondering, in addition to him, are there other visual effects and innovators that have, you know, these pioneers who've changed everything, people who influenced your work? Do you want to talk about them and how they're changing everything? Because of course, James Cameron always changes everything.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I don't know about Peter Jackson so much, although Mortal Engines was kind of interesting, which was very, very CG heavy. But I think it's going to be more toward the characters. This is my, one reporter's opinion, that it's going to be there. One thing that I've noticed over the years, the fire effects have gotten a lot better.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
Because when they first started, it's like, oh, that's CG fire. It looks like crap.
Right.
And now it's, oh, that's CG fire. Not bad.
Well, like sometimes they do those reflections where the fire's somewhere else and it's reflecting off a glass pane and stuff like that stuff. That's practical, right?
Yeah, put a flame bar out there.
Yeah, so like that's interesting. But I mean, we've got a ton of things we can draw from your resume, and I was wondering if we could, about some of your roles on doing practical effects, cinematography, things of that nature, and how that's sort of influenced what you see about production. And like I can list a few here, but we were talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and I feel like we can both just jump into that because there's like so many elements of that film when I was rewatching it that I forgot were groundbreaking for the time. Like you had the practical effects of the ships, like war galleons blasting each other in space,
which is exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like an old like sea shanty sort of like legend of two nemesis like just doing what they're doing.
They still haven't raised their shields.
Raise ours.
Their shields are going up.
Lock phasers on target.
Locking phasers on target. They're locking phasers. Raise shields.
Fire!
And what I like about that is there's that practical effects, there's the digital effects, and then they did that thing with Genesis.
You did all this in a day?
The Matrix formed in a day. The life forms grew later at a substantially accelerated rate.
That's all CG.
Yeah, like wild. And I feel like that's kind of where those effects, like one of those movies where everything was in it at that time was fresh.
And I don't think ILM did the Genesis planet. That may have been done by Evans and Sutherland in Salt Lake City. Don't hold me to that. Because we were going to Salt Lake City. We had two effects supervisors on this. You had Ken Ralston, who really knows his stuff. And somehow the other effects supervisor, Jim Ballou, nice guy, but somehow he got into the second effects supervisor slot, and he wanted to do a computer-generated starfield. Even though ILM had a starfield ready to go. It was a big cove set with a camera in there, so you could, program the camera to move around and take pictures of the starfield. Well,
right, because even in that opening credit roll, the starfield itself felt like there were lights in space, in an actual space, like a hangar, and the camera was traveling through. Like it didn't feel like it was digital. when I was watching. I was like, this is interesting. The starscape feels like there's actual objects coming at me. I don't know if that's a visual effect or if that was...
Well, the problem with the CG Starfield that Evans and Sutherland did, it was basically you put the camera inside a big fishbowl. And the fishbowl being the starfield. You could only move the camera so far through the starfield, and then you'd run out of stars.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, anyway, it got me a trip to Salt Lake City a few times. I was the camera assistant. And we were hauling this huge VistaVision camera. I think we used the studio camera on that. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
In case any of you don't know what VistaVision is, it's a process that was developed in the 50s to compete with CinemaScope. And what it was, regular 35 millimeter pulls down 4 perfs. VistaVision pulls across 8 perfs, so you have this huge picture area. Still used in effects work now, but not as much.
So those two formats, was it hell?
Well, just because hauling all this crap around, they did not build stuff very light in the 50s.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. So I mean, like that, and like let's say, Blade Runner came after. So like when we're talking about your career path and how your skills developed, how did they mature from Wrath of Khan into Blade Runner?
Well, I was full on motion control camera assistant and motion control operator camera assistant working under Dave Stewart.
Okay.
And it was learning a lot about the lighting on the miniatures, which was primarily him. But once it got lit, then I was the guy that got to shoot it.
Ooh, okay.
And usually it was more than one pass through the camera.
Right.
We were doing multiple pass photography.
Right.
Which, what that means is, because the camera was all computer controlled, you'd do the one pass of just say the city light. Close the shutter, put the lens cap on, back the camera up, back the film up. Turn off the city lights and turn on maybe the signs. You'd do it again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Same thing with Close Encounters. That's how we built the saucers.
That's rad. Okay.
The saucers are a minimum of 3 passes through the camera, but usually about 5. And of course, if you screw up one of the passes, you get to start over.
Oh my god! And you don't find out until.
Oh yeah.
Right.
There was one on Close Encounters. It was one of the saucers, and a lot of them, if you look at the saucers, they look like they have faces. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the one we put everything on. Somehow I missed the marks on this, and the thing comes back, and the mouth of the one saucer is like off to the side. Oh, hope nobody noticed that.
It had a bad day, that saucer.
Yeah, it did. It
woke up on the wrong side of space. But then I guess the next thing is like when I was watching Star Wars Return of the Jedi. The thing is, again, I noticed was even though the Millennium Falcon is faster, they did things that made it slower in the frame, but it still felt faster than every other ship. I feel like some of the momentums that we miss in just purely CGI-driven stuff is that everyone's going the same speed all the time, and there's no. It's like it's almost like watching a video game, and someone's just mashing the buttons, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, cool, I don't care about the scene. But when you watch Return of the Jedi, you're like, every object has its own speed, its own mass, and they're all in the same shot doing stuff. What was it like doing that kind of capture?
I was doing the space battle sequence at the end, so a lot of the ships was like, okay, the ship has to get from A to B in so many frames.
Right.
Okay. This would all, I'm assuming that Ken Ralston had this plotted out earlier, so he knew the relative speeds of everything. The old blockade runner. That's the one that looks kind of like a hammerhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that comes by camera. A lot of that is just going to be object in relationship to the camera.
Right.
is going to give it its speed.
Right.
Is this making sense to anybody? But I knew it would make sense to you. Okay, everybody's nodding.
Okay.
So a lot of it is that.
Right.
But one of the things we would do is we would shoot a black and white of the ship.
Okay.
In this case, let's use the blockade runner.
Okay.
For an example, and then maybe again something else. You get the black and white and would bipack them into this. Basically, it was a big moviola.
When you say bipacked,
one piece of film on top of the other.
Oh wow! Okay. Yeah.
And thread them up very carefully, because if you didn't, the mechanism would eat the film.
Yeah, because of course you're pushing it, right? It's out of spec now.
Yeah, I think we did a tri-pack at one point, but that's like...
Where you're just like doing one frame at a time, you're like, oh, it's still good?
No, we'd run it at speed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's why you'd get the relative speeds to the ships. Sometimes it'd just be something as simple as, okay, A ship starts on this frame, B ship starts 3 frames earlier.
Right.
It's just juggling it. You can do it a lot easier now,
right. Yeah,
because you have computer technology to do it. If you were back to doing miniatures, which most people aren't, which is too bad.
Well, I mean, like this all ties in perfectly to a joke, a classic joke from Spaceballs, which is the opening credit.
Oh,
where the ship just keeps going
on and on.
Like, at first you're like, haha, and then like by the end you're laughing because it's just ridiculous, and it just keeps going. Did you work on that?
Yeah, I worked on the opening sequence.
Yes.
The problem the ship was actually longer at one point.
Oh my god.
Right in the middle of the ship there were like 3 pieces they looked like pipes. And the ship went by and everybody's sitting in the screening room going, it's a little long. Can we take the pipes out or cut them in half? And that's what happened, yeah. The ship was actually longer at one point.
That is so funny. Because yeah, that I always forget about that sequence too when I like for whatever reason when
with the Jaws theme playing in the background.
It's like, and it just keeps going. And then it has that, what is on the tail? There's a...
We break for nobody.
Yes! I'm like, that's so good. I know that Spaceballs was an opportunity to sort of satirize everything you worked on.
Yeah.
Were there things that you guys had basically discovered doing somewhere else and you like, were just goofing off, like, putting that in Spaceballs? Like...
That was more of a Peter Donen thing.
Oh, okay.
I may have suggested something, but
yeah.
You know, that was more him.
Because I mean, like, I can only imagine when you're putting in thousands of hours of actual practical effects, you're like, this would be hilarious if but you don't get to do it because the genre is like serious, right? So
yeah, there's only so many liberties you can take with some things.
Right.
Although back to directors and effects supervisors' choices, on Return of the King, they had a maquette of the platform, either Return of the Dead or the Kingdom of the Dead.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it was smaller, so Peter could take a little lipstick camera and go, I like this angle here, I like this angle here.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of this was laid out in advance.
Okay.
And I said, hey, what would happen if we put the camera up here and see the Fellowship enter and then start to see the Army of the Dead? And Jackson goes, I like that idea, do it. Biggest pain in the... I mean, doing it on something that size was one thing, but getting out there with the camera and the full-size miniature was another.
You're like, what have I done?
Yeah, well, basically, what have I done? And the crew's going, what have you done?
The way is shut.
Oh, quick story on Paths of the Dead. You're on the platform with the King of the Dead, and that's all miniature. And then the camera pans over, and you see the other Kingdom of the Dead that's sunk into the walls, and you see that start to to materialize. And they're, okay, we have a motion control shot, so we're going to pan over onto these guys. They couldn't find the miniatures for several days.
Oh, wow.
And these things were like 9 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
They put them in a warehouse somewhere on their side.
You're talking like basically a wall that had all of the minis.
They were different pieces, so you
Right.
can kind of place the City of the Dead.
Yeah,
to
9-foot
taste.
wall set pieces. That
No,
were
it's like, you know, placed to look good.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
But it's just, you know, so where are these? We have no idea. So they just went on this big hunt to try to find the City of the Dead.
And you're just like, oh my god. But I mean, like, so I'm just going to go back to Willow now.
Okay.
Willow follows Spaceballs, and even even Willow's an opportunity to have some satire in there. There's quite a bit. I love the fact that there's a lot of practical effects in that involve stunts and you know, the trolls. You know, the trolls, and then they're all on these big set pieces like the castle at the end and things like that. And then you have that stop motion Hydra creature that comes out of the lake.
It's a double. It was referred to as the double dildosaurus. Yeah, you can cut that.
No, we're leaving it in. It's now part of the zeitgeist. Everyone knows it.
I didn't shoot that. That was Phil Tippett doing stop motion.
You heard it here, folks.
I don't know if anybody ever said that to Phil's face, but if you look at it, when the creature takes I think it takes a soldier and goes like that, you can see the thing slide down through the throat. Yeah, there's a lot of nice touches in that thing.
Yeah, and you know, just a random thing about that movie. I like the fact that the hero is a swordsman, and he doesn't get his sword until like halfway through the movie, and he's frustrated the whole movie. He's like, I'm really good. I promise, I'm really good. He never gets a chance to show off. And everything else is just like practical effects and like what do you call it? Comedy.
Yeah.
Like a lot of slapstick comedy, and it's just like really baked in there. It's
the Brownies, who always sounded like they should be playing for a French hockey team.
True. Yeah. They remind me of French Canadians. You know?
Yeah.
And
I think that's who they were patterned after.
Oh, that's so
they
funny.
backed off on that a lot. Because they did some crew screenings, and it's like, so what do you think of the Brownies?
It's
That way. You are drunk, and when you are drunk, you forget that I am in charge.
Fine, then which way do we go? That way!
Oh,
I didn't
funny.
like them. I found them irritating as hell.
As a kid, I loved them.
A lot
yeah,
of, yeah.
yeah.
But you know.
Yeah. But it's still cool, like the sense of scale and how they're able to do that. I also remember that was the same technology, the morphing or animation technology, when he was using his wand. Oh my God, he was using a wand to change her back.
Yeah.
And there's all that.
Looks for Luwafa Dan Tuwafa Tuwafa. Look for Danalora. Look for Danalora. Luwafa Danu. Tuwafa Tuwafa. Danu. Look for Danalora. Tuwafa Danu. Tuwafa Tuwafa. Danu.
I wasn't part of that, but I would see dailies. They had a real tiger.
Yeah?
Yeah, they had a real tiger.
I think all those individual elements had to be shot, and then...
Yes.
Right.
They had a real tiger, and he had a gold tooth. Don't ask me why. But
That's rad.
The turtle, the ostrich, and there was some other creature. Those were all puppets.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
Yeah. So what did you work on in Willow?
I worked on the fairy forest sequence, and something on one of the, I got assigned laser transfer,
Mm-hmm.
But the fairy forest sequence, originally they went out into the Marin Woods with Warwick Davies, and I forget who takes the part of Migosh.
Mm.
And they had this big ass light.
Like one of those fake suns or whatever?
I don't know. But it was... I don't know whether it didn't get the look they wanted or it was considered too dangerous for the act. That got nixed.
Mm.
So what we had to do, every time Willow and Migosh are looking back toward Finn Rizal,
Mm-hmm.
God, I can't remember
Razel.
that I remember all these character names. That's all miniature. That's a miniature forest.
Oh, that's outstanding.
But every time she's looking at them,
Yeah.
up here, that's real.
Huh.
Out in the Marin Woods. So.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How did you bridge the gap on those two things? Because you've got practical and then you've got the miniature.
I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I saw the movie. I'm trying to remember if Migosh and Willow and Finn Rizal are ever in the same shot, or they just keep cutting back and forth. Cross-cutting between the two. I'd have to look at it again.
And of course, we have to talk about Dick Tracy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was doing matte paintings. I was in the matte painting department. I photographing. I can't draw or paint worth a damn. Yeah. Straight. Can you draw a straight line? Yes, if I have a ruler.
Right. That's cool.
So we were doing that over at Disney, and that was in the old photochemical days. And that there's some guys that had made an entire career, and that's all they do. All they did was matte camera work.
I mean, there's got to be a whole skill set there.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
And what about Judge Dredd? That was just the slide, Judge Dredd?
We had to bring up Judge Dredd, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We've got to go there.
It was the sly Judge Dredd. The good news is the city looked pretty damn good. The bad news is there was the rest of the movie.
That's true. But you're not saying anything controversial, so.
Oh, I didn't think
it's allowed.
A lot of the motion control passes because of the long exposures and the fact that some of the, went on for several hours sometimes. Would leave somebody babysit the shot, and my assistant and I would go out, and we found copies of older scripts. They were better scripts.
Oh man.
Well, the end of the one, and I think this is how it ends in the comic book, because the other operator I was working with, he was a big Judge Dredd fan, so he'd bring in stacks of these things, and I'd sit there and read them. And in one of the versions, Dredd and I forget the bad guy, the Arma Desante character.
I can't remember. No.
There are these fuel barges. They're fuel blimps that go around the city, and they're small. And they end up in this huge punch-out on top of one of the blimps.
Oh, that's right.
And Dredd bails out, hits the blimp, and the whole thing blows up. I said, yeah!
Yeah.
Did we do it? No.
Oh, man.
Fight on the stupid Statue of Liberty. Not that I have anything against the Statue of Liberty.
No, it's it's pretty cliche, fight on the Statue of Liberty. Right on the nose. Daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, watch the first 20 minutes of the picture. Awesome.
Nice.
That was all practical effects. That was when the fireball comes through the tunnel. The fireball CG. The car. Can you see that the cars are about that big, and they're radio. A lot of them are radio controlled.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you could have them smash into stuff, and Grant McCune had a lot of the cars. They built the noses out of lead, so when they smashed into something, the nose would crumple up.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Cool. So they would basically do like a lead facade and then sort of like a mock-up of the paint,
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
But that was a fun one to work on.
Yeah. Dante's Peak.
Another fun one to work
on.
I was supposed to go and work on Dinosaur at the time, but that kind of came to a grinding halt for whatever reason.
Right.
And I asked, do you have an opportunity to go work on Dante's Peak? Can I go off staff for several weeks there? Yeah, just, get off payroll, go do that. And so I went over and did that.
And what did you work on that?
Plastic flow down the mountainside.
Okay.
I never try saying that 3 times faster after a couple of martinis. What else? The cloud coming in over the little town.
Yeah.
And the whole end sequence where the blast comes through and destroys the streets.
Right.
Yeah, that was all miniatures that were probably audience can't see this, probably about as tall as this room.
Oh, wow.
And they were all breakaways.
So how do you, for example, like, how did you get the lava and all that stuff to look as bright as it did? Because, like, there's always something about that where I'm like, how do you get a fluid thing to be that bright?
Bottom light it.
Really?
Yeah, they did. The end sequence in Return of the King.
Yeah.
Where they're on Mount Doom and they're taking what they had. I'm digressing from Dante's Peak.
Oh, for sure.
They had a giant tilt table.
Okay.
With lights on it, and they would crust it all up with the lava and the crust on the top. Chuck Schumer, not him. Chuck Schumann, that guy. They would have the camera fixed to the table, roll camera, and then the table would start to tilt. Lava flows down the table. It looks like, and when it's projected, it's level, and it looks like a river of lava.
I've heard it's also the same thing for like doing like explosions. They put the camera up top,
Yeah.
and then the explosion comes out of the camera.
When the Death Star gets destroyed in the first film.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cameras looking up, Death Star. And I think Joe Viscoso came up with that.
Well, now I know something about lava. Final Destination. I still have a fear of logs falling off the back of trucks.
As well you should.
Yeah, it's...
I have to think back. God, what did I do on Final Destination? I know I worked on it. I have a credit.
Vertical Limit.
Oh, Vertical Limit, yes. We did, the background pieces were paintings, the far background pieces, and the middle ground, where you actually saw the avalanche, that was all live action, miniature, and we shot that in the parking lot in Van Nuys.
Oh, wow.
Next to the airport.
And how big was the bigature?
The bigature was pretty big.
Yeah. Probably about the size of this room, a bit bigger?
No, bigger.
Oh, wow.
Bigger, yeah.
Because they need the momentum of the avalanche, yeah. And it's got to build up.
Well, it was also where the camera goes over the cliff.
Yeah.
We had a match move on that.
And just for the sake of the audience, what is a match move?
When he goes over the cliff,
right,
camera pans and tilts down to him,
right,
to whoever the character is.
Right.
On the live action, on the miniature, we have to match the speed and the tilt.
Okay.
And the pan.
Yeah.
So that I forget how many takes on it. We got it damn close, and then they massaged it in post.
Right.
There, so.
No, that
was fun.
That's pretty
quick story on that: the snow on the mountain scene. That's primarily baking soda and salt.
Ooh,
looks good.
So now I got lava and I've got snow. Good, good. We're making progress.
It rained the one night.
Yeah.
Kind of unexpectedly, and the entire mountain melted.
Oh. So now we're on to the big trilogy, and I'm wondering if you could talk about, just relive the BTS for me, because I love those films. We'll start with Fellowship of the Ring.
That was the elves in the trees, with that sequence, Lothlorien. On the live action set, everything that the actors are walking around is real, and the trees, the base of the trees probably went up about 8 feet, maybe 10 feet.
Right.
Because the branches stuck out on the miniature trees so much, you could only get the trees in so close to each other.
Oh, right, because the canopy would change the light, or...
No, you
enter
couldn't
the
get them
shot.
any closer because the branches would start banging into each other and you hear shit snapping off in the dark. So that had to be adjusted. Still worked out. So we shot all of the stuff for the first movie, and there was a whole sequence where I think the elves and Elrond comes out of Rivendell and goes over to Lothlorien to talk to the other elves about joining forces to go kick Sauron's ass.
Right.
What ended up in the movie was about 5 seconds behind Galadriel. That's all they got. Now, I don't know what it's like in the extended cut, couldn't tell you. But that was a little disappointing because Peter Jackson felt that the sequence went on too long. What does he know?
Well, I mean, so then we're on to the second, the Two Towers.
Yeah.
And of course, we've talked about the Battle of Hornburg.
Quick story on myself. I might as well out myself on this one. I had never read Lord of the Rings.
While you were working on it?
No. Prior to that, I tried reading The Hobbit 3 times, couldn't get into it. So, I'm getting ready to go to New Zealand, and Maggie, girlfriend at the time, wife now, goes, "You really should read this before you go over so you don't look like an idiot." Well, I can't read the... Here, Cliff Notes. And I was reading the Cliff Notes on the plane.
Oh my God. Wow.
But I got into the books when I was over there.
Yeah.
The books are good.
Yeah, they are.
There were some things that were cut out of the books that... And the one I keep picking on is Tom Bombadil. Not that I care, because in the book, Tom Bombadil doesn't do a goddamn thing to drive the story forward.
Agreed. I almost put the book down at that point.
Who's Mrs. Bombadil?
You guys are wrong. She was gone. I loved Tom Bombadil.
No, he's out there with his big yellow hat and his red boots. And
Exactly, it sounds amazing.
If I read the book over 2 months, 5 weeks was the Tom Bombadil section.
And I don't think they do it in the movie, because they don't even bring up Tom. They don't want to give him the ring, because he's everybody's favorite, Middle-earth hippie.
Right.
And he'd just take the ring, stick it in a tree, and it'd stay there for the next 200 years.
And they'd have to deal with it then.
Well, assuming he remembered where he put the ring.
Right.
So, anyway, he's out. I'm sorry some of you liked... Actually, he's not that bad a character, but he doesn't do anything to drive the story forward.
It makes sense. If you're shooting a film and you're like, that doesn't add anything, you just got to go.
Yeah, you got to keep pushing it forward.
Yeah. So then we're on to Return of the King. And what did you work on there?
Paths of the Dead.
Oh, yes. We talked about
And
that.
there was... I think there was a segment I road tested. We did some tests for the second film. It's the battering ram.
Ooh, yeah.
The battering ram was... Audience can't see this. How long's the table? 6 feet?
A little longer.
Yeah, about 8 feet.
Battering ram was probably close to 8 feet.
The bigature?
The bigature.
Oh, yeah.
And it was heavy. Because they wanted, when they swing it, they wanted that mass. The chains
Right.
were real chains.
Yeah.
So you got that mass when the orcs are bringing it up to start in on the door.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually one of those things where, again, practical effects gives you mass, and you can't escape that. You have to use something that
I don't know, it's that old laws of physics,
Yeah.
that damn Newton guy. We didn't have all those problems with Luke until he came up with it.
That's right. When you're adjusting points of light in VFX, you can't like, it's hard to just, even motion capture sometimes doesn't quite get mass, even though it was captured from somebody.
Some
you know,
real person.
They're somehow
Some real
floating
person.
a little bit, something's off. Someday.
Oh, quick story on Peter Jackson. We're in the screening room, and what they're doing, they have the orcs in full makeup, but they're in CG, they're redoing the eyes.
Really?
Well, because, orcs have bigger eyes, and they're just the way they're... And we look at these two, and somebody's saying blah, 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 blah about the third movie or whatever, and Jackson goes, no, that's not in this movie. That's in the second movie. It's Peter, it's two orcs on screen. How the hell did you know that? But he knew.
Huh.
Yeah. Pretty impressed.
Oh, man. You got to be that way though. If you're gonna put together a machine that big, you know all the parts.
Well, he's one of those.
Yeah.
He's one of those directors. I think he has a whole movie playing in his head.
Right.
I think Spielberg does too.
Right. Yeah. It takes a special type to handle all of that.
Yeah.
Final Destination 2 or Final Alert.
We did. Oh, the thing that everybody has fear of logs.
Oh right. So that was Final Destination 2.
Vehicles going out of control. They were pretty big, and I think those were radio controlled as opposed to
stunt driven.
Yeah, stunt driven or cable controlled.
Oh, okay. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah,
we're hitting all the good ones today, aren't we?
I left Pluto Nash off the list.
Oh, thank God. League isn't bad.
Yeah.
It could have been better. You had an ensemble cast. But the Mr. Hyde character at the end, it looks like they pulled him out of Saturday morning cartoons. I just could never believe him as a character. But who was it? The lead bad guy. When you go in and he's making all these war weapons, the war machines, that was all miniature. So that was pretty cool. I mean, it's one of those, I would have liked it. It could have been better.
Yeah. Alien 3.
I got to talk to Sigourney Weaver for about 15 minutes.
That's right.
She's really charming and really tall.
But like, what did you shoot with?
Where she gets pitched into the furnace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ran motion control on that.
Dinosaur.
That was almost like having a real job. I was on that thing for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because originally, I got hired because Disney wanted to do all the backgrounds as miniatures.
Right.
Okay, so bring Dave in, fine. Then they changed their mind. And they said, okay, we're going to do these all as live-action plates. So we went to place Florida in the summer, Death Valley in the summer. Florida.
You said 2 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Oh my God. Peter Pan.
Peter Pan was kind of fun.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I like Peter Pan.
That's good.
I like the end product. The stuff we did, which was all the city at the beginning.
Question.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes.
Is how do you feel about remakes of films you've done?
Depends on the film.
Right. So we're going to take a specific example. We talked about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Now, it's Into Darkness, right? Is the remake? Into Star Trek Into Darkness is the remake. I want you to go down that rabbit hole with me here because it's going to happen to so many filmmakers that have put in enough time, like you have, where they go, "Oh no, they're doing it again."
Into Darkness, it wasn't bad.
Okay.
From what I remember.
That's good.
Again, question: why are you remaking so much stuff? Now they did 2 remakes that I really liked.
Of your own stuff?
No,
Okay.
other people's stuff. The Fly.
Okay. Yeah.
Anybody see the original Fly?
The original Fly was amazing.
And the remake, the Cronenberg version, 10 times better. And the 310 to Yuma.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that actually. It's really good.
Ben Foster makes a great bad guy.
Oh yeah. That was the one where he's like, "You guys, some kind of posse." Is that the one?
You boys, some kind of posse.
How do you feel about the death of film as a recording medium and it's switching over to digital?
I was kind of resistant at first. You know, it's like, I turn, I go from, I turn into grumpy old man. Quiet. But as I've used it more, first off, there's the immediacy of it.
Right.
How was it
Play it back right away.
Let's play it back. Oh, there's a C-stand in the shop. What's that coffee cup doing there?
Ooh.
So there's that.
Coffee cup gate.
And it allows you to film in lower light levels. That film doesn't have that latitude at times. So, yeah, there's a lot of pluses to it.
I imagine too that it's more problematic to try and use film as a medium in post as well, because there's not many production houses that probably can do.
My understanding that everybody is taking, if it's captured on film, what they'll do is turn it into a digital media. I don't think anybody's cutting on film anymore.
No.
I think Walter Murch may have been the last one, but don't hold me to that.
Mhm.
Somebody want to get him on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but the advantage, because I've cut 3 shorts, and I've also cut stuff on film. The advantage is with digital, you can keep recutting that forever.
Well, I mean,
because you aren't destroying the film.
And you can always go back.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I can always change my mind. So you have some direct. Let's do it this way.
When you get a script,
Yes.
how are you breaking that down?
Usually it's broken down for me.
So someone's dictating their wishes to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially on the visual effects end.
So, like, would you be working with the storyboard artist, or would they be giving you their list?
In the case of Lord of the Rings, when I went over to New Zealand, I was handed, I think it was 2 notebooks about yay thick.
Yeah.
And it was all storyboards.
Huh.
That's so cool. Do you still have that?
No, I had to give it back.
It
goes back in the vault.
Yeah. And here's my shirts, underwear, and the storyboard. Nobody saw that.
Yeah.
Let's get it back to the States.
It's right next to the Bob Ross paintings that just go up in value, you know? Just like, no one gets them. They get bid on later.
Yeah, Bob Ross. Oh, happy little orcs.
Yeah. What's your process like from pre-production through to production and post?
In the miniatures case, we would, I'd shoot some tests,
Yeah.
to establish the look.
Right.
But in Lord of the Rings case, Paul Zane, who was a concept artist, and I worked with him over at Disney on a variety of things, he eventually ended up working on Box Trolls as the production designer.
Wow.
He brought in these absolutely gorgeous concept art. And I said, okay. We'll talk a little bit, and the concept art had already been approved by Jackson, so I would keep lighting to get that look. And once we got it, then we just went for it.
Wow. And then, were you normally involved in post, or was it like fire and forget?
Fire and forget. Because then it got turned over to either the visual effects supervisor or Jackson, and they would make the final corrections.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you think that's probably what's going to happen for most productions? Like for you, you've got a special set of skills that go with the things we've been talking about. But like, do you think that other cinematographers are involved in post, or are they also kind
Depends on the cinematographer. It depends on how far up the food chain you are.
Right.
I think who shot Perdition, Road to Perdition? Conrad Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, he's so far. Yeah, I'm sure he was involved in the post production.
Yeah.
Haskell Wexler.
Okay.
But on a lot of lower level stuff, and I don't mean, that's not meant as a denigrating term, but stuff that's not of that magnitude. It's like, thank you for your service, your check is in the mail, and we'll see you at the premiere.
That makes sense. Well, I get it. Larger productions are going to have a lot of people looking at different things, very specialized.
Yeah, and let's not forget the studio's got to get their fingers in the mix.
And protection of IP and all that
Yes.
stuff. Choices made.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. So as a member of Local 600, International Cinematographers Guild, how long have you been a member? And
I got in 1974 as a cartoon cameraman.
Cartoon?
Yeah, that doesn't mean I'm two-dimensional, and when you hit me on the head with a hammer, I compress. And
well, that's not my confusion. I'm like, you haven't mentioned anything about cartoons.
I'm sorry, give me a second.
That was the designation for people that would. It was okay. Flatbed art.
Okay.
Trying to think of it. War Wizards. It was a Ralph Bakshi movie.
What is all this? Bits and pieces of religion, man. What's the matter with you? Holy objects, they say for millions of years, man. Well, who we looking for? Hey, so dumb. We're looking for the priests, man, the priests.
Nobody went to see it. But it was all flat art, and you had the camera looking down on This illuminated art, you take a frame or two, change the artwork, take a frame or two, change the artwork.
wow.
And this was, you know, it was just like transcribing the Lord's Prayer in the head of a pin.
Yeah.
So that's how I got in. That's how, and because I was taking artwork over to this animation service right off of Santa Monica Boulevard. Their one cameraman was leaving to go off and work for one of the helicopter services.
Right.
Tyler Helicopter Systems. And I said, do you want a job? Why, yes I do, seeing that I had absolutely nothing coming up after this.
Right.
And I still had to feed myself.
Of course, I mean, like at that point in your career, it's like, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it could have been anything. And I ended up doing that. They got me in the union. Once I was in the union, because that's what I always wanted to be, because I knew I could do union gigs. And then at the time, the union was really, really frowned on doing a union member doing a non-union gig.
Right.
They have subsequently, over the years, kind of softened on that.
Right.
Because now it's like, oh, you're working on a non-union film. Would you tell us where they're filming?
Yeah.
And who's involved? And then somebody would show up several days later and try to sign up the whole crew.
Right.
Yeah. Now you have more members. So, which made perfect sense. So anyway, that's how I got in 74.
Oh wow.
Did that for about 2.5 years at the animation service. Then went over to Robert Abel, and then I got the job on Close Encounters.
Oh wow.
Just took off from there.
That's cool. Yeah. So basically, yes, and then the opportunity eventually just manifested, and you put in the time.
Yeah. And with the union gigs, some of them were really good. I got on to Peter Pan at the beginning of one year. Yeah, it was Peter Pan, and that was coming to that was in Australia. That was coming to a close. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call New Zealand, see if they have an opening. You know, just see if anything's coming up.
Leverage it.
Yeah, it's not that far. You know. No, we don't have anything. Okay, fine. Well, I'll back to 2 weeks later.
Nice.
We're doing some extra sequences. Would you like to come over and spend some time with you? Bet.
That's awesome.
And then when I got back to the States, we did more Peter Pan.
Yeah.
So I think that was I worked almost 10 months nonstop on Union Pictures. So, yes. Which is how I ended up living on the Central Coast.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of memberships,
yes,
you also belong to the Academy of Motion Pictures.
Yes.
So that means you get to pick who gets nominated, and you also get to pick who wins.
Okay, the way it works, I get to nominate, and, well, the visual effects is the division I'm in.
Okay.
Okay, so they'll have a screening. It's called a bake-off, and
Why is it called a bake-off?
I have no fucking idea. I think it sounds like you're going back to the county fair.
Yeah, it's true. I'm like,
this is
you're just flying by that. I'm like, what is that? Why?
I think it stems back to that. But anyway, they will run like 10 films, and you get to vote on them. There are more films than that, but there's a steering committee that will narrow down a lot of the visual effects films that were released that year. Because some of them are really good, and some of them it's like, oh, I should be watching this at 2 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep.
Right.
So they have it narrowed down to 10. Out of those 10, they will pick, I think, 5. Now, once those 5 are picked, then it goes to the General Academy membership when they have the final voting. And being a voting member, I get to vote on all categories.
Oh, that's rad. Okay.
But I will not vote on everything if I haven't seen all the films. I just won't do it.
That's very, very honest of you.
Well, because if I don't, I'm shortchanging somebody's work.
True.
You know.
And now I want to just switch from the Academy stuff.
Okay.
I want to switch back to directing.
Okay.
If that's possible. And when you're going into directing, have you ever been given really good advice that really shaped your directing style?
Other than find another career?
Well, I mean, that's pretty good advice, right?
Yeah, but I like film.
Right.
I really do.
Right. So, like, somebody was like, you're short of work. Well, you got to tell the story on that. Like, you're shifting into, when someone was giving you advice, or you just gave yourself advice to get into another
When
career.
I first started, I had relatives back east, and nice people, I guess. My uncle was kind of a jerk, but that's beside the point. And he, you know, I've done a film, and you could tell it's like, oh, when are you going to get a real job? Never said it, but it was implied. And then I got a screen credit, and they saw it. Attitude change right away.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
It's like it's not a real job until it's a real job.
Until it's a real job.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a weird one. So, because you come from camera side,
yeah,
do you feel that influences how you direct?
Yes, a lot,
Okay.
especially setting up shots.
Okay. And do you have an easier time with actors talking about the physical aspects, what you need for your shot, or do you talk to them performance-wise?
Much more performance-wise.
Okay.
Sometimes, you know, can I have you move a little bit, you know, deeper into the frame, things like that. I need you to hold the gun at a different angle, the one we just finished.
Mm. Okay, so like, how much planning do you do as a director? Or are you actually...
I spend a lot of time walking around the living room talking to myself. Make very crude sketches, which nobody in this room is going to get to see, because basically my drawing skills haven't progressed past the 3rd grade.
Well, I mean, if they work for you, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I can kind of show it to Sean or, you know, the DP, and they,
And they're like, this is a person? This is
this is, which guy is this?
Okay, I've got it. So, what do you look for in a project when you're going to direct?
The one that's dangerously close to being finished, I like the story. I like the story a lot.
And what's it called?
That is Homecoming.
Okay.
And there was just something about it. I liked it, and I think it turned out pretty well. We'll see what the audience reaction is.
And so what were you looking for in it, and then what are you looking to do with it?
It's the writer. He's a local writer up in the San Luis Obispo area. He wants to showcase himself, which is fine, because I want to showcase myself.
Right.
So that's why we did it.
Fair's deal. For directing, how is your process through pre-production, production, and post-production?
Pre-production, I'll either have a shot list, storyboards. What I did in this last time, the one that we just finished, I had 2 actors, and this was during the rehearsals, or the auditions, and I was just out there taking stills. So it's like, okay, I like that angle. No, you know, and just kind of shuffling through that. So I found that very helpful.
And then when you're, of course, in this sense, you're involved in post.
Yes,
this is no longer
I am post.
Yeah, you're no longer fire and forget. You're involved till the end.
Yep.
Okay, so how is that experience different?
I have to sit down and make some hard choices.
Yeah.
Which is, because you know, what we talked about earlier, I get to look at this thing several times, make changes, look at it several times. The audience gets to look at it once.
Do you ever get shot blind? Where you're like, I have looked at this forever. I don't know.
And that's the time to go out and have a cup of coffee or walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah, sometimes I get audio blind. I'm like, I don't know what's a good take, and I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're also part of the San Luis Obispo International Film Festival as a selection screener. We just talked about that.
And I'm on the board.
You're on the board, right?
Yeah.
So, what are the festivals that you're also looking for?
Well, obviously San Luis. We've gotten in the one that Sean and I, the first one we did, that got into Ojai.
Okay.
It's got into some other, and if you go on Film Freeway,
right,
everybody and their pet cat has a film festival.
Right. So you have to be sort of.
You have to be. It's like, okay, the Des Moines International Film Festival Corn Fest and Tractor Pull. No, I don't think so.
That sounds pretty rad, man. There's tractor pull.
Have you ever been to a tractor pull? They're really awesome.
Your movie's in the background, so you're like, I don't care. The tractor thing's cool.
So you have to be selective.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's going to cost you some X amount of dollars to get into any of these. Some of the bigger ones like Cannes, Santa Barbara, no, that's, you know, like, you might stand a chance, but I think it's who you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like throwing loaves of bread against the battleship Missouri, hoping to sink it.
Yeah. Now, we're getting into your shortest version of a film school. Because you've been at this since 1972.
Yeah.
So that's 50 years.
Can you phrase that a little differently?
That's 5 decades of film training.
That's slightly better.
Yeah, it feels better?
Yeah.
I think it's freaking cool.
That's rad. That's half a century of
Oh,
filmmaking.
God. Jesus.
Do you have anything that, like, would help people get into, like, terminology, trades, things
some
they
of the
would
better
start?
film school. One of the things, is Chapman Film College. It's a plug. Yes, feel free to send me money. Is that Chapman? My understanding, talking to some of the students, you're out there. It's hands-on.
Right.
So that's a big benefit. As opposed to what we do, and I'm pointing to Sean, it's you get the new PAs and it's like, that's a sandbag, that's a C-stand, that's a... Go.
Ooh, oh yeah.
Yeah. And so far, all of them have caught on real quick.
That's good. Well, that means they're hungry.
One of the things that that benefited me was the visual effects thing had kind of stopped at the moment between big blockbuster film. So I got into live action. I got in as a second assistant cameraman, which means you have to be really fast at loading the magazines. This was film. And once your job was done, once you banged the slate and kind of disappeared, you kind of watch what was going on.
Right.
And I learned a lot just sitting down and watching. So that was beneficial.
Right.
People that really want to get into it, yeah, you can get a film school, and it's a lot of film theory. You know, back to the black and white French films out of the 50s and 40s.
Like understanding where these influences come from and how the
Yeah,
zeitgeist
yeah,
was improved.
exactly. Yeah.
You know, yeah, I get that. I mean, like, context is good, but I also think at the same time you've got to just shape someone's behavior. You know, you got to shape their skills.
It depends on what you want to do.
True.
So,
this has been Below the Line, the show where we get to tell you about jobs you may or may not know in the film and television industry. Thank you so much for coming out.
You're very welcome.
You've been awesome.
And this has been fun.
Right on.
Plus, I got these guys to laugh, which is, that's my goal in life.
See you at the next Hall H lineup.
Yeah.